Hi everyone, I'm Zoe B and welcome to Simple Life Strategies TV. Today I have with me David Michie. David is a renowned author of many books, including The Dalai Lama's Cat, Enlightenment to Go, and also one of his latest books, which is Why Mindfulness is Better Than Chocolate. And we're going to be talking about this book today. So welcome David, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you very much, Zoe, for having me on your show.
All right, so I think what would be really useful is to maybe kick off by explaining a little bit about what mindfulness is, because I feel like it's a very hot topic right now, but I think a lot of people probably don't really understand exactly what it is. So that would be great if you can enlighten us.
Absolutely. Look, mindfulness is used as a word by so many different people in so many different contexts, but the most widely accepted definition of mindfulness is paying attention to the present moment deliberately and non-judgmentally. So that definition has three parts: paying attention to the present moment, deliberately and non-judgmentally. You might think, what else would I be paying attention to if not the present moment? And the answer to that question is, well, most of the time actually we're paying attention to our thoughts. Some fascinating research was done by Harvard psychology department, and they sent out questions to people randomly at different times of day and night saying, what are you doing, what are you thinking, and how happy are you? And it showed that 47% of the time we're not in fact thinking about what we're doing, we're thinking about something different. And unfortunately, this also means that only when we're thinking about what we're doing are we likely to be happy. So as they concluded at the end of their study, the ability to think about what is not happening is a cognitive achievement that comes at an emotional cost. So when we're not thinking about what we're doing, we're actually less likely to be happy than when we're actually deliberately paying attention to the present moment, in the here and now. And the other vital part of that definition is the non-judgmental aspect, because so many of us rely on our critical faculties moment by moment in our work, etc. And it's very difficult for us to just suspend that critical faculty. But it's very important that we do that, especially when we try to meditate or focus, because our minds are completely out of control. And if we beat ourselves up that, oh, that was a terrible session, I can't meditate, if we take that attitude of judgment, chances are we're going to give up before we really get started. And that would be a dreadful thing. So it's really important when you practice mindfulness to pay attention to the present moment deliberately and non-judgmentally.
Wonderful. That's such a great explanation. So it's really about being present without judgment.
Correct. Exactly.
In a nutshell. And how, because I think there's a bit of confusion around, mindfulness and meditation and how they differ and how the two work together. How would you sort of see the two in relation to each other?
Well, that's also the case. There are so many different definitions of meditation as well. But the most simple definition that I could give is meditation is when we practice mindfulness in relation to a specific object for a specific period of time. So if I was to say to 30 people, please be mindful for the next 2 minutes, some people might be mindful of the sensation of their breath, some people may be mindful of the sound of traffic outside, and all those are valid objects for mindfulness. But if we were to practice meditation, we'd be saying, right, we're going to all focus on, say, the tip of the sensation at the tip of our nostrils as we breathe in and breathe out. Or we might all be mindful of a mantra, or we'd agree on what the object is, in other words. So, and we'd also say we're going to be doing it for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So we might practice mindfulness during the day, and hopefully we all do, where we are present here and now without judgment. But when we practice meditation, we're kind of getting serious about it. We're in training, if you like, and we say for 10 minutes, I'm just going to focus on the sensation of my breath at the tip of the nostrils. And you might say, well, what is therefore the relationship between meditation and mindfulness? And I often use the example of, say, going to the gym, because if you go to the gym, that enhances your cardiovascular fitness, your muscle resistance, your flexibility, if you do certain things. So it enhances your physical well-being. And going to the gym is to your physical well-being what practicing meditation is to your mindfulness well-being or to your mental well-being. So if you practice meditation regularly, chances are you're going to be a lot more mindful than the person who does not. Just in the same way that, two people rushing up the steps with heavy bags, if one regularly goes to the gym, well, he or she's going to find it pretty effortless, whereas the other person might be struggling. It's the same concept, And there are, in fact, so many similarities between mind training and physical training. not least of which is that they both require a high level of emotional intelligence, because we have to put ourselves through a certain amount of pain before we start to see any benefit. I mean, at the gym that I go to, they've got a wonderful thing that appears on New Year's Eve or around New Year, which says 8 weeks for you to notice, 12 weeks for your friends, 16 weeks for everyone else. And that's to manage our expectations.
Yeah.
And it's much the same when you start to meditate. You know, it's not an instant fix. It's not like, well, we've meditated 3 times and now we've got, the mental equivalent of Arnie Schwarzenegger muscles. It's just not going to happen. But we will start to feel some effect after a period of time.
Yeah.
There are many, many different parallels. I get very excited about this, as you can tell.
I think that's such a great way to explain it, because I think you've really hit on probably one of the barriers that people have between, taking up things like mindfulness or meditation, and that's that they expect things too quickly rather than it being this sort of consistent, thing that we need to learn and get better at and improve upon. And I think I've always thought, in the future, people will train their minds every day, just like they train their bodies. It will be this kind of obvious thing that everyone does because we need it for our mental health and to be our best. So I think
absolutely. And there's a Buddhist sage called Shantideva once said, "I can't cover the whole world with leather to avoid stepping on thorns, but I can wear leather on the soles of my feet." And so, to me, if you don't meditate on a daily basis, and I know this is applying to 95% of the world's population, if not more, but to me it's like going outside without wearing any shoes and then walking in a really horrible, bushy, thorny place and then wondering why life is so tough. Well,
yes.
It doesn't have to be like that, You're making it hard for yourself. Wear a pair of shoes, for God's sake.
Yeah. It's so true. And I actually remember reading that in the book and thinking, wow, that's great. And I did actually write it down. It's such a wonderful metaphor for that. And I was lucky enough to be at a Marianne Williamson conference not long ago in Sydney, and she had a similar way of expressing it in that she said that, we get up every morning and we take a shower to wash off yesterday's dirt so that we're not entering the day with that dirt sort of all over us. And meditation and mindfulness is the same thing. You don't go into a new day with yesterday's dirt in your head and yesterday's, misgivings and problems and troubles. It's a way of sort of starting with a clean slate.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah, well, it has multiple benefits, as you know, but certainly mental clarity and management of stress are two very well-researched benefits of meditation.
Yes, and I think you read my mind. That was my next question. I was going to ask you, what are, and you go through tons and tons of the benefits, and that's what I loved about this book, is that it's so well researched. There's so much great research in there. But let's talk about just a couple of the benefits and some of the ones that came through, lowering levels of anxiety, depression, and even slowing the aging process.
Yes. Gosh, well, there are so many, as you say. It's more benefits than you can point a stick at, as you say, in Australia. Now, the thing is about the stress management, those have been the most heavily researched. I think it all began in the 60s with a guy called Herbert Benson, who was at the Harvard Medical School, and he noted what he called the relaxation response when people meditate, and he also noticed that our bodies self-repair, as he put it. And when we get into a meditational state, even if we're subjectively having a bad session, our bodies nonetheless change, our physiological functioning changes, and the change that occurs is there are certain observable things. For example, our breathing slows down and our heart rate slows down and so forth. But there are a lot of things that we can't observe. They're below the threshold of our awareness. For example, there's a hormonal shift that occurs. So if your body's been producing a lot of cortisol and adrenaline and sort of fight and flight hormones, which our bodies do when we're stressed out, when we meditate, they shift gear and we start to produce more endorphins. Now, endorphins are immune bolstering hormones, and if we don't produce enough of them, chances are we're going to feel run down and be hit by an allergy or cold or whatever bugs are going around at the time, or a far more serious condition. So meditation has all these hormonal changes that occur. And one of the things you hit on a moment ago was a number of different age-related markers. There's a steroid called DHEA, the most abundant steroid in our bodies. The older we are, the less we have of it. And it's been shown that people who've been meditating for 5 years or more, and I always emphasize it's not in one session of 5 years, but over a period of 5 years, your DHEA level will show the biological equivalent that is 12 years less than your chronological age. So if you're 40, you'll have a 28-year-old DHEA reading. If you're 60, you'll have a 48-year-old, and so forth. So it's really a very compelling reason to meditate, if for no other reason.
Wow.
But quite separate from that, Elizabeth Blackburn, who's a Nobel Prize-winning scientist here in Australia, did some studies on the telomerase activity, the telomeres at the end and of our DNA, and she showed that people who meditate, the telomeres sort of protect that cell division functionality of our cells for far longer than people who do not meditate, and a separate finding by the Shamatha project in California showed that the telomerase activity in meditators in the white blood cells was 33% higher than in non-meditators over a 6-week period of trial. So there are so many different tests that are coming out from different countries and different laboratories and different programs that are all pointing to different parts of the same jigsaw. And essentially, the bottom line is that when we meditate, we have the most profoundly beneficial impact both on body as well as mind. And in fact, we're only now beginning to find ways to measure just how positive that impact really is.
It's quite incredible, and I think what's wonderful about some of the research that's been coming out over more recent years is that it proves that it is actually a science, whereas I think previously it used to be looked at as something a little bit hippie or a little bit woo-woo. Now we're really starting to understand that this is a scientific principle here that we're engaging in, and I just think that's great because it will open the doors for more and more people to actually try it.
That was certainly the Western perspective. It was never the perspective of the East that there was something hit and miss about it. They had a very, very rigorous system. I mean, meditation has been around for at least 2,500 years in places like India. And when you have thousands and thousands of people trying a particular method and trying slight variations of the method and debating, discussing what the results were and trying different iterations of it, etc. Well, that's essentially a very scientific approach. And it's only in the West that we thought, oh, well, they're just sitting on their bums not doing very much. It's all a bit woo-woo and prove that it works. But the interesting thing is, you're quite right. It's only recently that we have devised sufficiently sophisticated equipment to measure what's going on in people's brains and various other physiological markers, so we can actually see, well, blow me down, this stuff actually works.
That's right. And if it's the elixir to eternal youth, then I'm sure plenty more women will be wanting to get into that.
Well, exactly. Well, it does seem to have profound impacts, and you couldn't tell that I was 90, could you?
I know. I was just going to say that. You look great for 150. Oh, wonderful. That's great. Hey, so one of the things that I found really interesting actually in the book was you talk about the alternative or nothing principle. And this is to help people who might be struggling to motivate themselves to actually put aside these few minutes each day to maybe do some meditation or practice mindfulness. Tell us a little bit about that principle. I think it comes from writing, doesn't it?
It does, yes, Raymond Chandler. I have a whole chapter in my book devoted to cultivating the habit of meditation, because the technique of meditation is actually very, very simple, and it's very easy to tell people how to meditate. You can cover all the basics in sort of a quarter of an hour, frankly. But it's not so difficult knowing what to do as just doing it, because it's hard. It's easy, but it's very difficult. So you got to, how do you actually get into the habit? And I give a number of different suggestions, and we don't need to go through all of those. But one of them is inspired by Raymond Chandler, who was a writer. Used to find that, and I find this too as a writer. When you sit down, you've got a blank Word document in front of you. The cursor's blinking away there, the top left hand of the screen. It's highly likely that you'll think of something terribly important that needs to be done at that moment, like the car that needs to be washed, or the cat needs to be taken to the vet, or something that's been on hold for the last several days or weeks suddenly needs to be done now. And so we're very easily distracted, basically, from discipline. Our minds will do anything to not to have to be disciplined. And so what Raymond Chandler decided to do when he was a writer, he gave himself this kind of apparent get-out where he said, I can sit at my computer if I like, and I don't have to write. But I can't get up from my computer. The one thing it's a do nothing alternative. I can sit there and do absolutely nothing for as long as I like, or I can write. And when you have that feeling that you can actually do have a choice, somehow it kind of helps break down one's resistance and think, well, if I'm here, I might as well just get on with it. So that doing nothing alternative was just one little psychological trick that Raymond Chandler used to make him basically be more productive. And it's a little trick that we can use as well for our meditation. That yes, you don't have to sit and meditate. You can sit and stare into space vacantly or daydream. But since you're there, you might as well just do it.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, I go to, as I mentioned earlier, I go to a gym, and they have a great sign over the door that says, "You're here now. That's half the battle." And I think that is such an inspiring line, because you feel good before you've even picked up a single piece of metal. And it's true, it is half the battle, because once you get there, you're unlikely to think, oh, well, I'm only going to do this for 5 minutes. You think, I might as well just do my program and get it done. It's the same kind of concept. It's all about showing up. That's what it's all about. It doesn't matter whether you go to the gym or go to the meditation cushion, you've got to show up, otherwise you're not going to get any benefits.
That's very true. And I like the way you've got that sort of illusion of choice there, and that you feel like you're getting a choice, and
exactly.
Really the choice is that it's going to be easier for you to actually just, do the writing or do the mindfulness technique. And it was interesting because I actually heard a piece of research recently that said that when given the choice, a very high percentage of people would rather experience a very low voltage electric shock than be left for 15 minutes without any devices. So,
yes.
Have you heard
well,
that?
Actually, yeah, it is extraordinary. I read another piece of research. I'm not sure whether it's the same one, but people are actually given a shock. As is so often the case in psychologists, they kind of disguise what they're actually testing. People thought they were being tested for their how much they're prepared to pay to avoid a shock, and they had these little tasers, and people would be tasered, and then say how much would you pay to avoid this happening to you again. And I think the average rate was something like $5 or something. It wasn't like a police taser; it was like a milder, but nonetheless unpleasant shock. And so there were $5 was and then they thought that was the research, and then they were left in a room outside the laboratory to fill in some paperwork or just to wait, I think, for a few minutes. And there was nothing in the room apart from this taser they'd just been tased with. And something like 70% of men and 30% of women tasered themselves.
You are kidding.
While waiting, because it dragged on for 10 or 15 minutes. Rather than face the kind of barren stillness of doing nothing, they just could not cope. They'd rather give themselves a shock.
That is so insightful, isn't it, into human nature. It's just we cannot bear this idea of doing nothing. It's so bizarre.
Well, Blaise Pascal, and I opened the whole book with it. Blaise Pascal once said, all of human unhappiness is caused by man's inability to sit in a quiet room alone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very
Nothing
true.
has changed since he wrote those words.
No. It's a very extreme case, but demonstrates the point nonetheless.
Exactly.
All right. So one of the other chapters that I absolutely loved, and I just could not put the book down for this chapter, was the one where you talked about the relationship between happiness and mindfulness and meditation, and how we often search for happiness through things that don't necessarily give us what we're looking for. So things like success, wealth, relationships. I just thought that was fascinating, and it seems to be such a common, I guess, part of the root of a lot of dissatisfaction for a lot of people is that we're looking in the wrong places.
Well, precisely. The thing is that we all tend to buy into this kind of social, I don't know what you'd call it, a social delusion, if you like, that certain things comprise a recipe for happiness. And the recipe for happiness is essentially financial stability, some level of achievement, stroke success or fulfillment at work, happy and contented relationships, and then other things can be added to it. But those are the sort of core, if you like. And yet when you look at it, many people who have those things aren't necessarily happy. And there are quite a few people who don't have some of those things who are very happy. And so you have to say, well, how valid is it? And so in the book, I go through each of them, and I show quite a lot of scientific studies that show that these are more illusory than real causes of happiness. So if those are not true causes of happiness, you have to say, well, what is the true cause of happiness? And we find that the true cause of happiness is not actually external at all. It's to do with one's mind, one's state of mind. And so rather than spending 90 or 100% of our time rearranging the externals of our lives, if you like, trying to get trying to get that job, trying to achieve that goal, trying to get the car or the woman or the boy or whatever it is we're trying to get. Instead of trying to do all of that, why not spend just a few percentage points of our time focusing on changing our inner being, our mind, ourself, because that's essentially where we're going to find the happiness. And a lot of happiness and unhappiness is not actually caused by the external world we live in, but our interpretation of it. And of course, that interpretation is a mental thing. Cognitive behavior therapy has this as its foundation, and I'm sure many of your viewers will be completely across CBT. But the basic premise of CBT is it's not what happens to you that makes you happy or unhappy; it's the way you interpret it. And so, cognitive behavior therapists focus on that band of thoughts, interpretations, beliefs, and they help their clients transform negative cognition to more positive cognition, which is all fantastic. And I've actually been on the receiving end of that as a client, as well as having studied it. The key thing, however, is learning to replace negative cognition with positive cognition. And it's very difficult to do that if we are locked into ingrained negative thoughts. And most of us are, unfortunately. We are all experts in making ourselves miserable. We have different brands of flavors of misery. Some of us are very good at being anxious. Some of us are very depressive. Some people, are constant. Their life is a constant drama, and if it's not a drama, they'll bloody well make sure it is. They'll do something to dramatize in a very negative way. So we all have our own particular specialities or our own niche areas of misery. But nonetheless, it's all a product of negative cognition. And so by practicing mindfulness and meditation, we become aware of our thoughts. And once that awareness is there, we can actually do something about it. You can't change what you don't monitor. You can't manage what you don't monitor. You need to be monitoring it. And mindfulness is a way of monitoring thoughts, because when we practice mindfulness, we can be mindful of what we're seeing, what we're smelling, tasting, etc. But we can also be mindful of our thoughts. And in fact, my particular thing I find most exciting about meditation is this mindfulness of thoughts, because we can shift our position from being victims of our thoughts to being observers of our thoughts, and we can stop the tail wagging the dog, which is what happens to most of us. And it's an incredibly subtle but liberating thing that happens when we start to see a thought merely as a thought, merely as a bit of cognitive chatter, a bit of narrative chatter that's going through the sky of our mind, rather than getting engaged with every single thought that pops along.
Yeah, and I love that, flavors of misery. I just think that's such a great way of looking at it. But yeah, you're completely right. It's only through those practices that we actually become aware, and that's always the first step. And I think it's what that does is it demonstrates that you are not your thoughts, which I think is something that a lot of us sort of get confused, don't we? We sort of assume that we are our thoughts, and our thoughts are real and they're accurate, when really they're not. We have 70,000 thoughts a day, and it's really our choice as to which ones we listen to.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, before I came to all these, I used to think that I am the sum totality of all the thoughts that I have, and that somehow is me. And now I think, how could I have ever thought that? Because I realize thoughts are just like clouds in the sky, and they arise, abide, and pass, and they have no permanent impact, and they only exist if I energize them with my attention. If I withdraw my attention from them, they cease to exist. I think, well, that's a bizarre kind of thing, but once one understands, and the metaphor I actually prefer is that thoughts are like waves arising from the ocean of our mind. And once we realize that, we become less fixated on individual thoughts and more interested in the ocean, because that's that is mind. And once we start to want to abide in that ocean, in that oceanic spaciousness that is our consciousness, we start to experience a very different idea of what mind is, and it's a beautiful place to be. It's a peaceful place, a tranquil, even a blissful place, and we discover for ourselves, if we haven't before, that we already possess this wellspring of profound contentment and well-being. It's within us all the time. It always has been there. The only thing that prevents us from enjoying it is these obscurations that conceal it, which is basically like it's like a veil. The veil is cognition. Once we kind of lose cognition and start to abide in the true nature of our own consciousness, we discover we already have everything we need right here and now. It's an amazing discovery.
It's beautiful. And there's a term in yoga, I can't actually remember the Sanskrit, but it translates to that which we seek, we already are. And it's just, yeah, it's pretty profound to understand that, isn't it?
Both profound, but also very practical. Because there are, simple steps you can take to getting there. It's not like we need to go and get a PhD or learn some complicated theory or whatever. It's available to us.
That's very true. So, shall we have a little go at mindfulness? What do you think? I think the viewers would love to perhaps just have, maybe it's 30 seconds or just a minute, just a taste of, how one gets into a mindful state. Do you think you could take us through something like that?
We can have a few mindful breaths, perhaps. So, would that be right?
That sounds perfect.
Okay. Well, what I would suggest people do is sit up nice and straight, because that's the most important thing. Keep a nice straight spine. BBC, bum and back of chair. Keep your head parallel to the ground. You can either close your eyes or just gaze unfocused in the distance. Take a nice deep breath. Just exhale. And as you exhale, give yourself permission that for the next 20 seconds, you're just going to focus on your breath. And then ignore every other aspect of your breathing, but just place your attention at the tip of your nostrils and focus on the sensation as you breathe in and breathe out. Like a sentry in a gatehouse, just observing the flow of traffic in and out. Just do this for a few seconds and come home to your breath. You might like to just end the session thinking, by this meditation, I'm becoming calm and relaxed, happier and more efficient in all that I do, both for my own sake, as well as for others. Then open your eyes and come back.
That was wonderful. Gosh, it's amazing, isn't it? Just a couple of seconds literally changes. I feel looser. Feel more relaxed. It's really quite incredible how quickly you can experience the benefits.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here today, David. It's been wonderful
you, Zoe.
Talking with you. And, I speak from personal experience. Mindfulness and meditation has utterly transformed my own life. And it's funny, I always joke, whenever I fall off, the meditation wagon for a couple of, I have periods where I fall off for a few weeks or a few days, life suddenly turns very ugly.
It does.
And it sort of reminds me how I can never, ever, ever go back, I don't think, to ever not doing it, because it's, there's such profound changes, there really are. So everybody at home, please go out and grab yourself a copy of David's wonderful book. It's very practical. It is absolutely packed full of incredible research and insight, and you'll really learn so much, and you'll be able to get started on your own mindfulness journey. So where can people pick up a copy of your book, David?
It should be generally available in bookstores, etc., and online.
Yeah, and on your website. What's your website URL?
My website's davidmichie.com. That's davidmichie.com. And also, in fact, I have free guided meditations that people can download. Some people are a little bit apprehensive about doing this by themselves, so no worries. You just download a guided meditation, and I've got how long they are. There's a few for 10 minutes and a couple for 15 and so forth. So people can use those as like starting wheels on a kid's bike, and then after they've been meditating for a few months, you'll get rid of the downloads and just do it by yourself.
Perfect. So everybody head on over to David's site and grab some of those meditations so that you can get started straight away. And before you know it, you'll have an integrated practice and you'll be reaping the benefits.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thanks again, David. And thank you everyone at home for watching today. If you've enjoyed this episode, then I'd love for you to share this with your friends and family. And if you'd like to hear more from me, then head on over to my website, simplelifestrategies.com, where I also give away some free resources as well for you there. So thanks again, everybody, for watching. I'm Zoe B. This is Simple Life Strategies TV, and I'll catch you next time.